Did you know that long before your world of instant news and electric lights, there existed a time when the heavens felt both terrifyingly close and impossibly far away? A time when the most reliable global positioning system was a prayer and a good sense of smell. A time of profound faith and equally profound fear, where the line between a miracle and a catastrophe was thinner than a spider's thread. Before you get too comfortable, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel to encourage me to make more content like this. Also, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights and let's begin tonight's journey. You are living in this world. The year is 1095. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth, wood smoke, and livestock. You feel the rough-spun wool of your tunic against your skin and the constant low-level chill that seems to seep from the very stones of the buildings. Life is a short, brutal, and often confusing affair. Your world is small, likely no bigger than the few miles you can walk in a day, and it is governed by two unshakable forces: the changing of the seasons and the word of the church. Every sunrise is a minor miracle, every harvest a gift from God, and every illness a potential punishment for some unknown sin. Fear is your constant companion. Fear of famine, which is always one bad harvest away. Fear of disease, which can sweep through a village and leave only ghosts behind. Fear of the strange and the unknown, which lurks in the dark forests beyond your fields. And then there is the fear of God's judgment, which is the most potent of all. The church is the center of your universe. Its stone spire, the tallest thing you have ever seen, a permanent finger pointing towards a heaven you desperately hope to reach. The stories painted on its walls and stained glass windows are your entertainment, your education, and your law. They tell you of saints and demons, of eternal salvation and everlasting damnation. It is a simple and terrifying binary, with very little room for error. The concept of a secular life simply does not exist. Your faith is not a part of your identity. It is the entire framework of your reality. And for the vast majority of people in Western Europe, that faith is the Roman Catholic Church, led by a powerful pope in a distant, almost mythical city. Yet, your world is also a divided one. You've heard whispers, perhaps from a traveling priest, of a great split that happened a generation ago, in 1054. A theological argument about things you don't fully understand, like the nature of the Holy Spirit and the authority of the Pope, has split the Christian world in two. In the West, you have your Pope, but far to the east, in a city of impossible grandeur called Constantinople, a different kind of Christianity exists. The Orthodox faith, led by its own patriarch. To you, it's all a bit confusing, but the priests assure you that they are the ones in error. In this world of rigid certainty, justice itself is a matter of divine intervention. If you are accused of a crime, you might face a trial by ordeal. You could be forced to carry a red-hot iron bar for several paces. Your hand is then bandaged and sealed. If, after 3 days, the wound is healing cleanly, God has declared you innocent. If it festers, your guilt is proven. It's a terrifying system, but to the people of your time, it makes perfect sense. God is an active participant in human affairs. Now, imagine the leader of that other Eastern Christian world. His name is Alexios, the first Komnenos, the Byzantine emperor. His empire is the last glittering remnant of ancient Rome, a sophisticated and wealthy civilization compared to your rustic corner of the world. But his lands are shrinking. A new and powerful force, the Seljuk Turks, has swept in from the east, conquering vast territories. They are now perilously close to Constantinople itself. Alexios is a brilliant strategist and a cunning politician, but he is running out of soldiers. So, he does something that will change the world forever. He swallows his pride, ignores the great religious schism, and sends a letter to his rival in the West, Pope Urban II. He doesn't ask for a holy army of the faithful. His request is much more practical. He is asking for a few thousand elite, well-trained mercenary knights to help him push the Turks back. A simple business transaction, or so he thinks. He has no idea that he has just lit the fuse on a powder keg of European anxiety, ambition, and religious zeal. The emperor's letter, a fragile piece of parchment carried across a continent, now rests in the hands of the most powerful man in Western Europe. You see him now, Pope Urban II. He is not a king, but in many ways, he is more than a king. His authority comes not from bloodlines or castles, but directly from God, or so you have been taught. He reads the plea from Alexios, and a plan far grander and more audacious than the emperor could ever have imagined begins to form in his mind. He sees not a simple border dispute, but a divine opportunity. An opportunity to heal the schism, to assert his authority over emperors and kings, and most importantly, to redirect the violent, restless energy of Europe's knightly class towards a single, holy purpose. He calls a great council in the heart of France, in a town called Clermont, and you, drawn by the gravity of the event, are there. It is late November, and a biting chill hangs in the air. The crowd is so immense that no cathedral could possibly hold it. So you stand in an open field, your breath misting before you, surrounded by a sea of humanity. There are powerful dukes wrapped in furs, their banners fluttering softly in the breeze. There are knights, their faces hardened by a lifetime of petty wars, their hands resting on the pommels of their swords. There are bishops and abbots in their fine robes, and thousands of common people like yourself, eyes wide with a mixture of piety and curiosity. A platform has been erected, and upon it stands the Pope. He is a skilled orator, and his voice, imbued with the authority of his office, carries across the silent, expectant crowd. He begins by speaking of the troubles in the East, just as Alexios requested. But he does not speak in the dry, political terms of a strategist. He speaks as a storyteller, a painter of grim and vivid images. He describes your Christian brothers in the East, suffering under the yoke of the Turks. He speaks of pilgrims being attacked, of holy places being desecrated, of altars being defiled. Historians still debate how much of this was accurate and how much was calculated propaganda. But for you in the crowd, it feels viscerally real. He is tapping into a deep, collective well of shared identity and righteous anger. They are your people, and that is your holy land. A feeling of injustice begins to smolder within you. Then, with a stroke of psychological genius, he turns his gaze inward, towards the knights assembled before him. He addresses them directly, and his words are a sharp and uncomfortable mirror. He speaks of their endless, violent squabbles. He calls them out for fighting their brothers, for laying waste to the lands of fellow Christians, for a life of sin and plunder that puts their immortal souls in mortal danger. You see the knights shifting uncomfortably. He is not just a pope, he is a psychologist. He is inducing a state of cognitive dissonance, making them feel the deep contradiction between their violent lives and their professed faith. And just as this guilt reaches its peak, he offers them the ultimate release, a path to redemption. He presents a new idea, a holy war. He tells them to stop fighting each other and to turn their swords against the true enemy of Christ. He tells them to march to the east, to reclaim the Holy Land, and specifically to liberate the city of Jerusalem. He frames it not as a war of conquest, but as an armed pilgrimage. And then comes the promise, the single most electrifying and world-altering offer ever made. For any man who takes up this cause, for the love of God alone, there will be an immediate remission of all sins, a plenary indulgence. It is the spiritual equivalent of a royal pardon, a clean slate, a guaranteed entry into heaven. It is the best deal you have ever heard. Think about it. For a knight whose entire life is a ledger of violent sins, this is an unmissable, one-time-only offer to wipe the slate clean. The Pope finishes his speech, his voice ringing with passion. For a moment, there is a stunned silence as the crowd processes the sheer magnitude of what has been offered. Then, a single voice, a bishop perhaps, cries out, Deus vult, God wills it. Another voice picks it up, and another, until the entire field is thundering with the chant, Deus vult, Deus vult, Deus vult. It is a moment of pure, unadulterated mass fervor. Men are weeping, knights are embracing, and a wave of collective purpose washes over you. Pope Urban II has not just answered an emperor's call for help, he has unleashed a force that will shake the foundations of 3 continents. The exact words he used that day were never perfectly recorded, a fact scholars find endlessly fascinating, but their effect was absolute. He had given a violent age its ultimate quest. The cry of Deus vult still echoes in your soul, but a great army of princes and dukes does not materialize overnight. Such things require immense planning, logistics, and the gathering of vast sums of money. It is a slow, grinding process for the wealthy and powerful, but the Pope's promise was not just for them, it was for everyone, and the faith of the poor is a fast-moving fire, unburdened by the weight of armor or the complexities of supply chains. Into this impatient silence steps a man who is the very embodiment of this raw, untamed fervor. You see him first as a silhouette against the dusty road, a small, wiry figure astride a donkey. His name is Peter, and they call him the Hermit. He is not an imposing figure. In fact, he looks like a beggar. He is gaunt, with bare feet, and a simple woolen tunic that has seen better decades. But when he speaks, the world seems to stop and listen. His eyes burn with an intensity that is both captivating and terrifying, and his voice, honed by years of preaching in the open air, is a powerful instrument. He claims to carry a letter written by God himself, a divine mandate for the liberation of Jerusalem. Historians still debate whether Peter was a genuine mystic who heard the voice of God, or simply a charismatic demagogue who surfed the wave of popular hysteria. But to you and the thousands who flock to hear him, he is a prophet. He is one of you. He speaks your language of hardship and hope, and he makes the Pope's grand theological promise feel personal and urgent. You watch as his following swells from a trickle to a flood. People leave their fields with the crops still waiting to be harvested. They abandon their anvils, their looms, and their homes. You see families with small children, the elderly leaning on wooden staffs, and even petty criminals seeking the ultimate pardon, all joining this great snaking river of humanity. This is not an army, it is a migration fueled by faith. It is the people's crusade. You are swept up in it. The logic is simple and intoxicating. Why wait for the rich lords with their slow, deliberate plans? God will provide. He will part the seas, feed the hungry, and strike down their enemies. This is not a military campaign. It is a procession of the righteous, and their faith is their only necessary weapon. This burning conviction, however, has a dark and immediate consequence. As this chaotic mass moves through the Rhineland of Germany, a twisted and venomous idea takes root. The cry goes up from the darkest corners of the mob, a question that feels logical in its own terrible way. Why should we travel thousands of miles to fight the enemies of Christ, when his supposed murderers live right here among us? The fervor for a foreign war turns inward, into a vicious persecution of Jewish communities. You witness scenes of unimaginable horror as the mob, convinced of its own righteousness, attacks people who are their neighbors, demanding forced conversions or their lives. It is a terrifying display of how group identity, when fueled by fear and hatred, requires an other to define itself against. The Holy Pilgrimage has its first victims, and they are not in Jerusalem. Eventually, this great, unruly procession, led by Peter and a minor knight named Walter Sansavoir, or Walter the Penniless, reaches the edge of the Byzantine Empire. You can only imagine the horror of Emperor Alexios. He had asked for a few thousand professional soldiers, and instead, he gets a disorganized, starving, and volatile horde of tens of thousands of peasants camping outside the walls of his magnificent capital. They are a diplomatic and logistical nightmare. His only goal is to get them across the Bosphorus Strait and into Asia Minor as quickly as possible before they tear his city apart, looking for food. He gives them supplies and advice, urging them to wait for the main crusading army of the princes. But their faith has now curdled into arrogance. They have come this far, and they believe they are invincible. They do not listen. They cross the water, stepping onto enemy soil, and into a trap from which they will never return, while the bones of the People's Crusade are being picked clean by vultures and bleached by the Anatolian sun. A different kind of force is gathering back in the heartlands of Europe. This is not a disorganized torrent of faith, but a disciplined, deliberate, and altogether more dangerous river of steel. This is the army of the princes. You watch as the forges of a continent glow day and night, hammering out swords, chainmail, and helmets. The air is filled not with the desperate prayers of the poor, but with the clank of armor, the neighing of powerful war horses, and the serious calculated talk of logistics and strategy. This is not a migration, it is an invasion, and it is led by some of the most formidable and ambitious men of the age. You see them now, these great lords, each the center of his own universe, each leading his own army. They are a study in contrasts. Their motivations a tangled knot of piety, greed, and a thirst for glory that is almost impossible for a modern mind to fully unravel. First you notice Godfrey of Bouillon, Duke of Lower Lorraine. He has a reputation for being exceptionally devout, a man who genuinely seems to believe in the holy mission. He is not the richest or the most powerful, but there is an aura of quiet, determined authority about him. He sells or mortgages nearly everything he owns to fund his expedition, a sign of his commitment. Alongside him is his brother, Baldwin, whose eyes betray a more worldly ambition. Where Godfrey sees a holy city to be liberated, Baldwin sees a land of opportunity, a place to build a kingdom of his own. Then, from the south of Italy, comes a man who looks like a giant from one of your childhood stories. This is Bohemond of Taranto, a Norman warrior in the prime of his life. He is tall, broad-shouldered, and possesses a charisma that is both charming and predatory. He is the son of a great conqueror, but due to the laws of primogeniture, he is a prince with no kingdom to inherit. For him, the crusade is the ultimate gamble, a chance to carve out a principality in the East that will rival any in Europe. There is also a personal edge to his quest. He has spent years fighting the Byzantine Emperor Alexios in Italy. The idea of now becoming his supposed ally must bring a cynical smile to his lips. He is not a man driven by simple faith. He is driven by a burning ambition that the crusade has made holy. From the wealthy lands of southern France comes the oldest and richest of them all, Count Raymond IV of Toulouse. He is a veteran of wars against the Muslims in Spain, and he is one of the first and most enthusiastic nobles to take the cross. He is so wealthy that he funds his entire massive army himself. His motives are perhaps the most complex. He is too old to be driven by youthful ambition and too rich to be motivated by simple greed. For Raymond, this feels like a capstone project for his life, the ultimate act of piety to secure his legacy on earth and his place in heaven. He has sworn an oath to never return home, to die in the Holy Land. Historians still debate the primary motivation of these men. Was it a land grab wrapped in a prayer, or a prayer that happened to offer land as a reward? The truth is likely that for the men themselves, these two ideas were not contradictory. To serve God and to enrich oneself were seen as two sides of the same glorious coin. You watch as these separate armies begin to move. Unlike Peter's rabble, these are organized forces. There are endless baggage trains, carrying supplies, blacksmiths, priests, cooks, and even noblewomen. Each knight is a walking fortress of iron, accompanied by squires and servants. The cost of this undertaking is astronomical. One curious but common sight is a knight wearing a simple woolen cross crudely sewn onto his expensive tunic or surcoat, a humble symbol of faith placed over the very real instruments of wealth and war. These are not a single, unified force. They are four distinct armies, moving by different routes, each loyal to its own commander. You watch as these separate streams of ambition and steel begin their slow, inexorable journey east, all destined to converge on a single point, the golden city of Constantinople. You have been traveling for months, a journey that has tested your body and soul. The world you knew, a simple landscape of fields, forests, and small towns, has melted away. Now, after a seemingly endless road, you see it. At first, it is just a shimmer on the horizon, a golden haze where the sea meets the sky. But as you draw closer, the shimmer solidifies into something beyond your wildest imagination. Constantinople. It is not just a city, it is a statement, a declaration of power and permanence that makes every castle and cathedral you have ever seen look like a child's toy. The Great Theodosian Walls, a triple-layered masterpiece of defensive engineering, rise before you, seemingly high enough to touch the clouds. Towers march along its length at regular intervals, a silent, stony army that has repelled invaders for centuries. This is the city your leaders have been talking about, the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, the last unbroken link to the Caesars. As you pass through the gates, your senses are overwhelmed. The sheer scale of it is dizzying. You walk on wide paved streets, a luxury you have never known. You see towering aqueducts, magnificent forums filled with ancient statues, and churches whose domes seem to float in the air, glinting with gold leaf. The air is thick with 1,000 unfamiliar smells, exotic spices from the east, the salt of the sea, and the scent of 1,000,000 people living in close quarters. The people themselves are a spectacle. They are dressed in silks and brightly colored linens, a stark contrast to your own practical, drab wool. They look upon you and your fellow crusaders with a mixture of curiosity, disdain, and poorly concealed fear. To them, you are not noble saviors. You are the Franks, a crude, unwashed, and dangerously unpredictable horde of barbarians who have shown up on their doorstep. This is the ultimate culture clash, a meeting of two worlds that both call themselves Christian but share very little else. Soon, your leaders are summoned to the imperial palace. You hear stories of its splendors, of rooms paved with marble and ceilings covered in glittering mosaics. They are brought before the Emperor Alexios I Komnenos. He is not a weak, desperate ruler begging for help. He is a sophisticated and cunning statesman, draped in purple silk, the imperial color, and surrounded by a court that operates on layers of protocol and intrigue that are utterly alien to the blunt, straightforward knights of the West. He has already dealt with the disastrous People's Crusade, and he has no intention of letting another, much more powerful, Western army run rampant in his territory. He has a simple, and from his perspective, perfectly reasonable demand. Before he will provide supplies and ferry them across the Bosphorus into enemy territory, each prince must swear an oath of fealty to him. They must promise to return any former Byzantine lands they conquer from the Turks back to his empire. This demand lands like a boulder in a calm pond. The princes are proud, fiercely independent men who see themselves as answering only to the Pope, and by extension, God. Swearing an oath to a Greek emperor they secretly consider to be a heretic feels like a betrayal of their purpose. Raymond of Toulouse, the oldest and most pious, flatly refuses at first, arguing that he has sworn an oath only to God. Bohemond, the ambitious Norman who is Alexius's old enemy, sees the political game being played and hesitates, calculating his own advantage. To add to the intimidation, Alexios receives them on his famous throne of Solomon, a piece of astonishing imperial technology. It is a golden throne flanked by mechanical golden lions that roar and beat their tails, while golden birds in a golden tree above it sing and chirp, all powered by some hidden mechanism. To the Crusaders, this is not engineering, it is something akin to sorcery, designed to awe and unnerve them. Historians still debate whether Alexius's primary goal was the genuine recovery of his lands, or simply a way to control and contain the dangerous, unpredictable Western army he had invited into his home. One by one, through a masterful combination of flattery, thinly veiled threats, and lavish gifts of gold and silk, Alexios gets his oaths. The princes agree, though you sense the promises are made with crossed fingers and simmering resentment. The fragile alliance is sealed, and Alexios, with a sigh of relief, begins transporting this formidable army across the water into Asia. The shimmering gold of Constantinople is now behind you, a memory that feels more like a dream. In its place is the harsh, sun-baked reality of Anatolia. You have crossed the Bosphorus, and with that narrow strip of water, you have left the familiar world behind. You are in enemy territory now. The air is different, drier, and it carries the scent of dust and strange, thorny plants. The feeling of being a guest, however unwelcome, in the Emperor's lands is gone. Now, you are an invader. The vague, righteous purpose that filled the field at Clermont must now be translated into the brutal, bloody business of war. Your first major objective looms on the horizon. A city whose name is spoken with a mixture of respect and strategic importance. Nicaea. It is the capital of the Seljuk Sultanate of Rum, a formidable fortress, and the first true test of this holy army. Its walls are immense, reinforced by over 200 towers, and its western side is protected by the vast, shimmering expanse of the Ascanian Lake, making a full encirclement seem impossible. The initial assaults are a disaster. You watch as waves of your fellow crusaders, full of fervor, charge the walls, only to be thrown back by a relentless storm of arrows and stones. The grim reality of siege warfare sets in. This is not a glorious battle of clashing swords. It is a slow, grinding, and deeply impersonal business of engineering and attrition. You see great wooden siege towers, painstakingly built, being rolled towards the walls, only to be smashed to pieces or set ablaze by pots of burning pitch. You hear the constant thudding rhythm of the mangonels and trebuchets, hurling massive stones that either bounce harmlessly off the thick walls or arc uselessly over them. In a gruesome display of psychological warfare, the Turkish defenders begin to use the Crusader dead as ammunition, catapulting severed heads back into your camp. A grim message that you are not welcome here. Days bleed into weeks, and the initial enthusiasm begins to curdle into a grim, stubborn resolve. But then, you see a strange sight on the lake. A fleet of ships, sails billowing, seems to have appeared from nowhere. It is the Byzantine navy, dragged overland on rollers at the command of the cunning Emperor Alexios. He has sealed the city's last supply route. The psychological effect is immediate. The defenders of Nicaea, seeing their last hope vanish, decide to surrender. But they do not surrender to you. In a secret deal, they surrender to the Emperor's general. One morning, you wake up to see the imperial banners of the Byzantines flying from the city walls. Alexios has his city back, and you, the Crusaders who bled and died for it, are left outside the gates, denied the right to plunder it. A generous gift from the Emperor does little to soothe the sting of betrayal. A deep and dangerous seed of distrust for your supposed allies has been planted. The army marches on into the arid heartland of Anatolia. The journey is a trial by fire. The sun is a merciless hammer, and the land offers no relief. Water is scarce, and food even scarcer. Turkish horse archers, masters of hit-and-run tactics, harass your columns relentlessly, appearing from the shimmering heat haze to shower you with arrows before melting away again. Then comes the true test of your army's resilience. At a place called Dorylaeum, the Seljuk army ambushes the vanguard led by Bohemond. For hours, his smaller force is surrounded, on the verge of annihilation. It is only the timely arrival of the main army, led by Godfrey and Raymond, that turns a certain defeat into a stunning victory. It is a vital lesson. Separately, you are vulnerable, but together, you are a juggernaut. Finally, after a march that has claimed thousands of lives, you arrive before the true prize of northern Syria. the ancient, legendary city of Antioch. If Nicaea was a fortress, Antioch is a mountain range that has been turned into a city. Its walls are the work of giants, snaking for miles over hills and through valleys, punctuated by hundreds of towers. It is a city that has defied conquerors for 1,000 years. The siege begins in the autumn, and it will last for nearly 8 months. Winter sets in, cold and wet. The initial confidence drains away, replaced by a gnawing, soul-crushing despair. The surrounding countryside is picked bare, and starvation becomes your new commander. You watch as proud knights are reduced to skeletons, eating their own war horses, then mules, then dogs, rats, and even boiled leather. Desertions become common, men slipping away into the night, their faith broken. The great holy army is starving, freezing, and dying on the doorstep of a city that seems to mock you with its impenetrable strength. The crusade is no longer a glorious quest. It is a fight for sheer survival, and it is a fight you are beginning to lose. The siege of Antioch has become a living nightmare, a grim tableau of starvation and despair. You are trapped between the unbreachable walls of the city and the vast, hostile land behind you. The dream of Jerusalem feels like a cruel joke, a story told to children in another life. The army is slowly dying, not in a blaze of glory, but with the quiet, desperate whimper of starvation. Just when all hope seems lost, a flicker of something new appears. It comes not from a great lord or a holy relic, but from the shadows of betrayal and greed. Bohemond, the ambitious Norman, has been secretly negotiating. He has found a weak link, an Armenian Christian within the city walls, named Firuz, a captain of one of the towers who holds a grudge against his commander. Firuz agrees to betray the city, but he has one condition. He will deal only with Bohemond. Bohemond sees his chance. He goes before the other princes and lays out his plan, but he adds a demand of his own. When the city falls, he will not hand it over to the Byzantine emperor as promised in their oath. He will keep it for himself. He will be the Prince of Antioch. The other leaders are horrified. This is a direct violation of their sacred oath to Alexios, but they are trapped. The alternative is to sit here and starve to death. After a bitter and acrimonious debate, fueled by the gnawing emptiness in their stomachs, they reluctantly agree. The deal is struck. Under the cover of a moonless night, you watch as a small group of Bohemond's knights scales a rope ladder lowered by the traitor. The city's defenses have been breached, not by a trebuchet, but by a whisper. The gates are thrown open, and the Crusader army, transformed from starving beggars into a ravenous pack of wolves, pours into the sleeping city. The months of pent-up frustration, rage, and hunger explode in a frenzy of violence. The streets run with blood as the Crusaders slaughter the city's inhabitants, both Muslim and Christian, in a chaotic and indiscriminate massacre. You are caught in this wave of brutal release, the sounds of screams and clashing steel echoing off the ancient stone buildings. But your victory is a poisoned chalice. Just days after you take the city, a massive Muslim relief army, led by the powerful Turkish general Kurboga, arrives. The tables are turned with breathtaking speed. The besiegers have become the besieged. You are now trapped inside the very city you just conquered, with almost no food, and facing a fresh, well-supplied army that vastly outnumbers you. The situation is now worse than ever before. You are starving again, but this time there is no hope of foraging. The city has been picked clean. Despair descends like a physical shroud. Men who survived the horrors of the march and the siege now simply lie down in the streets and die. And then, at the absolute lowest point, when the entire crusade is on the verge of complete collapse, something extraordinary happens. A poor, obscure pilgrim named Peter Bartholomew comes forward with a fantastic claim. He has been having visions of St. Andrew, who has revealed to him the location of the most sacred relic in all of Christendom, the Holy Lance, the very spear that pierced the side of Christ on the cross. The princes are skeptical, particularly the papal legate, But Raymond of Toulouse, perhaps desperate for any sign of hope, supports the man. They begin to dig in the floor of the Cathedral of St. Peter, one of the oldest churches in the world. They dig all day, finding nothing. Then, as evening falls, Peter Bartholomew himself jumps into the pit. A few moments later, he emerges, holding a rusty spearhead. A miracle. Historians still debate this moment intensely. Was it a genuine discovery, a lucky coincidence, or a brilliantly timed fraud, a pious deception to boost morale? To the men in that starving city, it does not matter. The effect is electric. It is a direct sign from God. Their suffering has a purpose. Their cause is just. He is with them. Fired with a renewed and almost terrifying religious fervor, the Crusader army, a skeletal force of starving men, does the unthinkable. They throw open the gates of Antioch and march out to face Kerboga's massive army. What happens next defies all military logic. The Crusaders, fueled by nothing but faith and desperation, charge the Turkish lines and, against all odds, smash them completely. The victory is total. You have not just survived, you have triumphed. The road to Jerusalem is now open. The victory at Antioch was a miracle born of desperation, but it leaves a complex and bitter aftermath. The Holy Lance, whether real or not, has done its work, but the unity it forged is fragile. You are no longer starving, but the army is exhausted, depleted, and deeply divided. A plague sweeps through the city, claiming many lives, including the papal legate who was the nominal spiritual leader of the expedition. Without him, the rivalries between the princes, which had been simmering beneath the surface, now boil over into open conflict. Bohemond, true to his word, declares himself the Prince of Antioch, refusing to give the city to the Byzantines and arguing, with some justification, that Emperor Alexios had abandoned them to their fate. Raymond of Toulouse is furious, seeing this as a violation of their sacred oath and a selfish betrayal of the Crusades' true purpose. For months, the great holy army goes nowhere. You are camped in and around Antioch, a pawn in the squabbles of your leaders. They bicker over who should control which captured town, who holds the most authority, and what the next move should be. The incredible momentum gained from the victory over Kerboga is squandered in petty arguments and political maneuvering. The common soldiers and pilgrims like yourself grow increasingly restless and angry. You did not come all this way. You did not suffer starvation and watch your friends die, just to sit here while the nobles carve up Syria for themselves. A chant begins to rise from the ranks, a simple and powerful demand: Jerusalem, Jerusalem. The pressure from the bottom up becomes immense. You see Raymond of Toulouse, sensing the mood of the army and eager to position himself as the true, pious leader of the crusade, finally decide to march south, even if he has to do it alone. The other leaders, fearing they will be abandoned and lose the support of their own men, have no choice but to follow. The march south is a strange and surreal experience. After the horrors of Anatolia and the brutal slog at Antioch, this leg of the journey feels almost easy. Many of the local Muslim rulers along the coast, having heard of the Crusaders' ferocity and the defeat of Kerboga's great army, are terrified. They offer no resistance. Instead, they offer tribute, supplies, and safe passage, eager to have this terrifying army pass by their lands as quickly as possible. You march through lands that feel like they are from the Bible itself, past towns with names like Tripoli and Tyre, and the sense of destiny. The feeling that you are approaching the center of the world begins to build again. One bizarre episode stands out, a testament to the strange mix of piety and brutality that defines your world. While besieging the town of Marat-on-Neumann, the Crusaders, once again facing starvation, resort to cannibalism, a fact recorded with chilling frankness by the chroniclers of the time. It is a grim footnote, a reminder of the desperate measures men will take to survive. Finally, in the early summer of 1099, you climb a small hill, and you see it, spread out before you, bathed in the golden light of the Judean hills, is Jerusalem. The sight silences the entire army. Men fall to their knees and weep. This is the culmination of 3 years of unimaginable hardship. It is the earthly representation of their heavenly goal. But the city is not undefended. The Fatimid governor of Jerusalem, having expelled the Seljuks, is well prepared. He has poisoned the wells outside the city and driven the livestock away, forcing you to operate in a barren landscape under a blistering sun. The city's fortifications are formidable. The siege begins. It is a race against time. You are desperately short of water and, even more critically, wood. The surrounding hills have been stripped bare of trees, and you have no timber to build the essential siege engines. The towers and battering rams needed to breach the walls. For weeks, it seems that you have come all this way only to fail at the final hurdle, to die of thirst at the gates of the holy city. Then, another miracle, or perhaps just a stroke of incredible luck. A group of Genoese sailors arrives at the port of Jaffa, and they dismantled their own ships, providing the precious timber needed. Carpenters work frantically, and soon 2 massive siege towers, one under the command of Godfrey and the other under Raymond, are constructed. The final assault is about to begin. The long, bloody journey is reaching its climax. The fate of the city and the very soul of the crusade hangs in the balance. The holy city is yours. The euphoria of that final bloody conquest still hangs in the air, a phantom ringing in your ears. But as the dust settles and the grim work of cleaning the streets is completed, a new and far more complex reality sets in. Winning Jerusalem was a miracle of faith and fury. Holding it will be a task of grinding, relentless effort. You now live in what the Franks call Outrima, the land beyond the sea. It is a thin, precarious sliver of Christian-held territory, an island in a vast Muslim ocean. Godfrey of Bouillon, in a show of piety, refuses the title of king, saying he would not wear a crown of gold where Christ wore a crown of thorns. He takes the more humble title, Advocate of the Holy Sepulchre, but a title does not make a kingdom secure. The biggest problem is a simple one of logistics and safety. The Crusader states depend on a constant flow of pilgrims and supplies from Europe. These pilgrims are your lifeblood, bringing money, manpower, and a connection to the world you left behind. But the journey from the coast, from the port of Jaffa to Jerusalem, is a treacherous 40-mile road through hostile hills. It is a perfect hunting ground for bandits, Bedouin raiders, and remnants of the defeated Fatimid garrisons. You hear horrifying stories almost every week. A group of pilgrims, their long journey from France or Germany finally over, are ambushed and slaughtered just a few miles from the safety of the city's walls. The very people you came here to protect are more vulnerable than ever. The knights of the realm are too few, and their duty is to the great castles and cities, not to policing dusty roads. Into this vacuum of security, 2 new and revolutionary ideas begin to form. The first is an evolution of something that was already here. For decades before the Crusade, a group of Benedictine monks had run a hospital in Jerusalem, dedicated to caring for sick and destitute pilgrims, regardless of their faith. You know them as the Order of the Hospital of St. John, or simply the Hospitallers. They are healers, men of peace and compassion. But living in this new, violent reality, they begin to change. They see the need not just to heal pilgrims after they are attacked, but to protect them in the first place. Slowly, cautiously, they begin to take on military duties, hiring mercenaries, and eventually becoming knights themselves, swapping their medical instruments for swords when duty calls. The second idea is even more radical. It is born from the mind of a French knight, Hugues de Payens. Around the year 1119, he and 8 other knights approach the king of Jerusalem with a startling proposal. They want to form a new kind of monastic order. They will take the traditional vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. They will live a communal life of prayer and contemplation, but they will also be knights. Their sacred duty will be to patrol the road to Jerusalem and protect the pilgrims. The king, desperate for a solution, agrees and gives them a headquarters in a wing of his palace, located on the Temple Mount, the site of the ancient Temple of Solomon. From this, they take their name, the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, or for short, the Knights Templar. Think about this for a moment. How can a man be both a monk and a killer? The idea is a paradox, a walking contradiction of everything you have been taught. Thou shalt not kill is a divine commandment. A monk's life is one of peace, dedicated to praying for the sins of the world. A knight's life is one of violence. To merge the two seems almost heretical. But the great theological minds of the age, like the influential Abbot Bernard of Clairvaux, create a powerful justification. They argue that a Templar is not committing homicide, the killing of a man, but malicide, the killing of evil. By slaying an enemy of the faith, they are not sinning. They are performing a righteous act, protecting the innocent and serving God's will. Historians still debate the true motivations behind the acceptance of this radical idea, whether it was pure theological innovation or a pragmatic response to a desperate military need. You watch as these two orders grow. The Templars, initially so poor that their seal famously depicted two knights sharing a single horse, soon become the recipients of enormous donations from an admiring Europe. They become a powerful elite fighting force, and also, improbably, the world's first multinational corporation, developing a sophisticated banking system that allows pilgrims to deposit money in Europe and withdraw it safely in Jerusalem. A new kind of man has been forged in the crucible of Outremer, the warrior monk, dressed in the white mantle of purity with a stark red cross. He is a symbol of this new, strange world. A man who prays for peace and trains for war, a living testament to the violent piety of the age. You have survived, you have conquered, and now you must live. The great defining quest of your life is over, but life itself is not. You find yourself in a world that is stranger and more vibrant than you ever could have imagined. This is not the grim, grey, and perpetually damp world you left behind in Northern Europe. This is a land drenched in a brilliant, almost aggressive sunlight. The air is warm and carries the scent of jasmine, spices, and the sea. You are a settler now, a Frank in the land they call Outremer, and the daily business of creating a new society has begun. Your heavy European wool is about as practical here as a fur coat in a sauna. You quickly adopt the lighter, more sensible local clothing, wearing cotton and linen, and perhaps even a flowing robe to shield you from the relentless sun. Your diet changes completely. You taste sugar for the first time, not as a rare and fantastically expensive medicine, but as a common ingredient. You eat apricots, oranges, and lemons, fruits that were once just exotic names in a merchant's tale. The markets in cities like Acre or Jerusalem are a dizzying kaleidoscope of cultures. You see grizzled Frankish knights, their chainmail swapped for more comfortable attire, haggling with Arab merchants over the price of spices. You see Greek Orthodox priests, Armenian traders, and local Syrian Christians all navigating the crowded, narrow streets. You hear a dozen languages spoken at once, a constant, humming backdrop to your new life. You are the ruling class, but you are a tiny minority, a handful of conquerors living amongst a vast population that is not like you. To survive, you must adapt. A new generation is born here, children of the original Crusaders. They are called the Polancs. They have never seen the cold forests of France or the misty shores of England. Their skin is darker, tanned by the eastern sun. They are often fluent in Arabic, as well as their parents' Frankish tongue. They are more comfortable in this world than you will ever be, understanding its rhythms and its people in a way the original conquerors cannot. They are a physical manifestation of this new, hybrid culture. But this integration has its limits, and sometimes the cultural gap reveals itself in stark and almost comical ways. You hear a story from an Arab nobleman about his encounter with Frankish medicine. He tells of how a local doctor was treating a knight with a leg abscess by applying a poultice, with good results. A Frankish doctor arrived, declared the local man incompetent, and asked the knight, "Do you prefer to live with one leg, or die with two?" The knight chose life, so the Frankish doctor called for a strong man and a sharp axe, and proceeded to hack off the leg with a few brutal blows. The knight died instantly. In the same story, the Frankish doctor treated a woman with a headache by shaving her head and carving a cross deep into her skull. She also died. To the sophisticated medical world of the East, your European practices seem like butchery. Historians still debate whether Outremer was a true melting pot, a place where cultures genuinely blended, or if it was more like an apartheid state, where two societies lived side by side with a strict hierarchy of power. The truth is likely somewhere in between. While you might adopt local food and clothing, your laws remain separate. If you, a Frank, have a dispute with a local Syrian Christian, you are judged in different courts, under different legal codes. Intermarriage is rare and often discouraged. For all the daily interaction in the marketplace, there remains a deep and persistent barrier between the rulers and the ruled. Life settles into a strange kind of routine, a mixture of European feudalism transplanted into the Middle East. Great castles, like the massive Crac des Chevaliers, rise from the landscape, stone symbols of your permanent intent to stay. They are marvels of military architecture, far more advanced than anything back in Europe, incorporating the best of Byzantine and Arab defensive designs. But they are also islands, bastions of Frankish power in a land that is not truly theirs. You live in a state of constant, low-level warfare. It is not always a grand clash of armies, but a series of raids and counter-raids, cattle rustling, and border skirmishes. It is a precarious existence, this fragile new world you have built. You have created a kingdom, but you live on a fault line, and you can feel the faint, deep tremors of a world that is slowly, but surely, gathering its strength to push you out. For nearly 50 years, your world in Outremer has existed in a state of perilous equilibrium. You are a ruling class, a Frankish aristocracy governing a foreign land, but the land has become your home. The Muslim world that surrounds you, which once seemed like a monolithic and terrifying threat, has revealed itself to be something far more complex. It is deeply and profoundly fractured, for the powerful emirs of cities like Damascus, Aleppo, and Cairo, the real enemy is often the emir in the next city over. The arrival of the Franks was a bizarre and shocking event, but once the initial invasion was over, you became just another piece on the chessboard of their intricate political games. It was less a unified front and more a dysfunctional family reunion, where everyone distrusted everyone else's cooking. Frankish lords would often form alliances with one Muslim ruler against another, a pragmatic but surreal state of affairs that blurred the lines between holy war and simple power politics. But now, you feel a change in the wind. The disunity that allowed the First Crusade to succeed, that allowed you to build your kingdoms on this coastal strip, cannot last forever. In the city of Mosul, far to the northeast, a new kind of leader has risen to power. His name is Imad al-Din Zengi. He is not like the decadent, poetry-loving rulers of Damascus. He is a man forged in the harsh, unforgiving crucible of the frontier. He is ambitious, utterly ruthless, and he has a singular, driving vision to unite the Muslim forces of Syria and Iraq under his personal command. He cleverly wraps this ambition in the language of holy war, of jihad. He presents himself not as a conqueror, but as a unifier, the man chosen by God to finally expel the Frankish invaders. Historians still debate whether Zengi was driven more by a genuine passion for jihad, or by a cold, calculated ambition to build his own personal empire. But for the people he rules, the distinction is irrelevant. Zengi is a man who inspires both loyalty and absolute terror. You hear stories of his discipline, which is legendary. He was known to have his own soldiers crucified for minor infractions like trampling a farmer's crops, not out of a sense of justice for the farmer, but because it represented a breakdown in order. His army is not a collection of squabbling factions. It is a single, sharpened weapon, and he is looking for a place to strike. His gaze falls upon the most vulnerable of the Crusader states, the county of Edessa. It is the northernmost, the most isolated, and the least populated of the 4 Frankish principalities. It is an island of Frankish rule in a sea of Turkish and Armenian territory, a tempting target that has grown complacent under its ruler, Count Jocelyn II. In late 1144, Zengi sees his opportunity. Jocelyn II, in a moment of profound carelessness, takes the bulk of his army away from his capital city to engage in a minor dispute elsewhere. It is the mistake Zengi has been waiting for. He descends upon the city of Edessa with his entire force, and the siege begins. The city is strong, but its defenders are few, and their leader is gone. Zengi's siege is a masterpiece of military engineering and relentless pressure. His sappers dig tunnels beneath the massive northern walls, propping them up with wooden beams. Then, they fill the tunnels with flammable material and set them alight. You can almost feel the heat, the smoke, the groaning of the earth as the wooden supports burn away. On Christmas Eve, a huge section of the wall collapses. Zengi's army pours into the breach. The news of the fall of Edessa hits the rest of Outremer like a physical blow. It is a catastrophe of the highest order. For the first time since you arrived, a major Crusader city, one of the original 4 pillars of your world, has been reconquered. The psychological shock is immense. The aura of Frankish invincibility, which had been your greatest weapon, is shattered. You look to your northern borders with a new sense of dread. The monster you had forgotten to be afraid of is not only real, but it is organized. It is powerful, and it is coming for you. And this shockwave does not stop at the shores of the Mediterranean. Word of the disaster travels on the merchant ships, a grim message making its way back to the heart of Europe. A holy city has been lost. The work of the first Crusaders is being undone. A cry for help goes out to the Pope and to the kings of Christendom. The stage is being set for another great convulsion, another wave of holy fury to be unleashed from the west. The catastrophic news from Edessa lands in Europe like a thunderclap on a clear day, shaking the very foundations of Christendom's confidence. The Pope, Eugenius III, knows that a response is required, a new call to arms to reclaim what has been lost. But he needs a voice, a firebrand orator with the power to move the hearts of kings and commoners alike. He finds his man in Bernard of Clairvaux, a Cistercian abbot who is, without exaggeration, the most influential man in Europe. If Pope Urban II was a master statesman, Bernard is a spiritual superstar, a man whose reputation for piety and miraculous healing is so great that people would rip shreds from his robes just to have a piece of him. When Bernard speaks, all of Europe listens, and so the call goes out again. But this time, it is not answered by ambitious dukes and landless princes. It is answered by the A-list celebrities of the 12th century, the 2 most powerful monarchs in the West. You see them preparing their armies. King Louis VII of France, a young and deeply pious man, and Conrad III of Germany, the Holy Roman Emperor, a grizzled and experienced veteran of many wars. This is not a risky venture led by second sons. This is the combined might of the 2 greatest powers in Europe. On paper, it looks like an unstoppable supergroup, a holy endeavor with a guaranteed outcome of success. What could possibly go wrong? Accompanying King Louis is his wife, a woman who is in many ways more famous and more powerful than he is, Eleanor of Aquitaine. She is not a quiet, demure queen. She is the Duchess of Aquitaine in her own right, a vast and wealthy land, and she is a force of nature, intelligent, headstrong, and determined to go on crusade herself, along with a retinue of her ladies-in-waiting. Her presence brings glamour and excitement, but also a great deal of baggage, both literal and political. that will have unforeseen consequences. The armies that gather are colossal, far larger than the forces of the First Crusade. You watch as they depart, two immense rivers of steel, one French and one German, flowing east with all the confidence and pageantry of a royal procession. The confidence does not last long. The journey is a textbook example of how not to run a military campaign. The two kings distrust each other and fail to coordinate their movements. The German army, under Conrad, marching ahead, is ambushed and practically annihilated by the Seljuks in Anatolia, in the same lands where the First Crusaders had won a great victory. Conrad himself is wounded and barely escapes with his life. The French army, following behind, fares little better. Harassed by Turkish raiders and struggling with their enormous, clumsy baggage train, they are bled white in the mountain passes. The relationship with the Byzantines, already strained after the First Crusade, is now openly hostile. The Greeks see these new crusaders not as saviors, but as a dangerous mob, and they offer little help, eager to see them out of their lands as quickly as possible. The battered, demoralized remnants of these two once great armies finally limp into the Holy Land. They gather at the city of Acre for a great council with the local Frankish nobility, the Poulencs. They have to decide on a target. The obvious choice would be to march north to retake Edessa, the very reason the crusade was called in the first place. Another logical move would be to attack Aleppo, the new power base of Zengi's son and successor, Nur al-Din. They do neither. In a decision that has baffled historians for centuries, they decide to attack the city of Damascus. This is strategic madness. Damascus was the one major Muslim power in the region that was an enemy of Nur al-Din and a frequent, if cautious, ally of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Attacking them was like burning down your neighbor's house because you heard a rumor about a fire 3 towns over. Historians still debate why this happened. Was it a result of the European kings' arrogance, ignoring the advice of the local lords who knew the political landscape? Or was there some secret betrayal or miscalculation? The siege of Damascus is a short and humiliating farce. The Crusaders attack the city from its western side, through a dense maze of orchards and gardens, which provides excellent cover for the Damascene defenders to harass their lines. Then, they make the bizarre decision to move their entire camp to the eastern side of the city, which had weaker walls but crucially, no reliable source of water. The leaders of Damascus, feeling utterly betrayed by their Namolis, do the one thing the Crusaders should have wanted to prevent at all costs. They send a desperate plea for help to Nur al-Din. Seeing this golden opportunity, he marches his army towards the city. The Crusader lords, facing a unified Muslim army that they themselves had created, lose their nerve. After only 4 days, the siege is abandoned. The Great Second Crusade, the one led by 2 of Europe's most powerful kings, dissolves in a cloud of bitter failure and mutual blame. The kings sail home in disgrace, having accomplished nothing but making their enemies stronger and their friends weaker. The spectacular failure of the Second Crusade leaves a bitter taste in everyone's mouth, but it also creates a dangerous illusion of security in Outremer. The great kings of Europe came, they saw, and they went home with their tails between their legs. To the arrogant Frankish lords, it feels like they have weathered the storm. They return to their petty squabbles and their complex web of treaties and truces with their Muslim neighbors. They have forgotten the most important lesson of the fall of Edessa. The Muslim world is capable of unity, and that unity is a far greater threat than any single army. While the Franks bicker, the man who benefited most from their blundering attack on Damascus, Nur al-Din, continues Zengi's work. He is a patient, pious, and cunning ruler, and he slowly but surely consolidates his power, uniting Muslim Syria under a single banner. And it is in his service that you first hear the name that will come to define the age. Salah al-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub, known to you and the West as Saladin. He is not an Arab, nor a Turk, but a Kurd, born in Tikrit. He is not, at first, a major player. He is a quiet, scholarly man who serves as a loyal and highly competent general in the army of his uncle, who is one of Nur al-Din's top commanders. Saladin is sent on a difficult mission to Egypt. The Fatimid Caliphate that rules from Cairo is ancient, fabulously wealthy, but politically rotten to the core, crumbling from centuries of decadence and internal strife. Nur al-Din sends his army there to prop it up and bring it into his sphere of influence. What happens next is a masterclass in political maneuvering. Saladin, initially a subordinate, finds himself in command after his uncle's sudden death. He proves to be far more than just a good soldier. He is a brilliant politician. He carefully and systematically dismantles the corrupt Fatimid power structure, not with a bloody coup, but with a series of quiet, strategic moves. It's a hostile takeover, medieval style. When the Fatimid Caliph dies, Saladin simply doesn't name a successor. He absorbs the immense wealth and military power of Egypt for himself, all while technically still serving Nur al-Din. Then, fate intervenes. Nur al-Din dies, leaving behind a young and weak heir. Saladin, now controlling both Egypt in the south and with his own loyal forces in Syria, has the perfect opportunity. He marches north and, through a combination of military force and brilliant diplomacy, makes himself the master of Muslim Syria as well. He has united the two great power centers of the Islamic world, Egypt and Syria, encircling the Crusader kingdoms in a deadly embrace. Historians still debate whether Saladin was a truly devout man driven by the ideal of jihad, or a profoundly ambitious empire builder who used the language of holy war as a powerful tool for unification. For you, living in the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the distinction is terrifyingly academic. You now face a single, unified, and incredibly wealthy enemy, led by a man who is both a military genius and a symbol of Islamic renewal. The breaking point comes in the form of a man named Reynaud of Chatillon, a Frankish lord who is the living embodiment of everything reckless and self-destructive about the Crusader states. He is a man who recognizes no treaty, respects no truce. He attacks a massive, wealthy Muslim caravan during a time of peace, violating a sacred agreement and personally insulting Saladin's sister, who was traveling with it. This is the final provocation Saladin needs. It is the perfect justification for the holy war he has been preparing for his entire life. He gathers the largest Muslim army seen in the region for a century and marches into your kingdom. The entire military force of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, under its foolish and arrogant king, Guy of Lusignan, gathers to meet him. They make a fatal mistake. Saladin lays siege to the town of Tiberias, on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. He is daring them to come to him. The wise course would be to wait, to force Saladin's army to run out of supplies. But spurred on by the hot-headed Reynaud, King Guy decides to march the entire army across a parched, waterless plain in the middle of a brutal summer to meet Saladin in open battle. It is a death march. You feel the sun beating down, turning your armor into a personal oven. Your tongue swells in your mouth, and the water skins are empty by the first day. Saladin's horse archers harass you constantly, and his forces set fire to the dry scrubland, filling the air with acrid smoke that stings your eyes and chokes your lungs. By the time you reach the hills overlooking the Sea of Galilee, a place known as the Horns of Hattin, the Crusader army is no longer an army. It is a mass of desperate, dehydrated men on the verge of collapse. The next morning, Saladin springs his trap. His army, fresh and well supplied with water from the lake, surrounds your exhausted forces. The battle is a slaughter. The Crusader army is annihilated. The king is captured. Reynaud of Chatillon is personally executed by Saladin. And most devastatingly of all, a shard of the true cross, your most holy relic, which had been carried into battle, is captured. With that single, disastrous defeat, the entire Kingdom of Jerusalem is left defenseless. The holy war has been lost. The news of the Battle of Hattin spreads through Europe like a pestilence. A story of disaster so complete it feels almost biblical. The greatest army the Kingdom of Jerusalem had ever fielded was not just defeated, it was erased. The capture of the true cross is a blow to the very soul of Christendom, a loss that feels more profound than any castle or city. Saladin, moving with incredible speed, sweeps through the now defenseless kingdom, capturing city after city. And then comes the news that strikes the final, devastating blow to European pride. Jerusalem, the holy city, the entire purpose of the last century of struggle, has surrendered to Saladin. The shock is so profound, it is said that when Pope Urban III heard the news, he died of a heart attack. A new cry for a new crusade goes out. But this is no longer a call to protect pilgrims or reclaim a lost county. This is a call for vengeance. This is a call to reclaim the greatest prize of all. And the men who answer this call are not just kings. They are legends in their own time. They are the three most powerful men in the Western world, a triumvirate of medieval might that looks, on paper, like an invincible force destined to crush Saladin and restore the kingdom. This is the Third Crusade, the Crusade of the Three Kings. First, you see the Holy Roman Emperor, Frederick Barbarossa. His name means red beard, and he is a figure of awe and respect. He is an old man now, in his late 60s, but he is a seasoned veteran of countless campaigns, a giant of the political and military landscape. He commands a colossal German army, perhaps the largest single crusading force ever assembled. He is so meticulously organized that he brings his own blacksmiths, bridge builders, and even a mobile court of justice. He chooses to march overland, the same perilous route that had destroyed the Second Crusade. But Barbarossa is a far more competent commander than Conrad III. He enforces strict discipline, and when the Byzantine emperor tries to obstruct him, Barbarossa threatens to sack Constantinople, a threat the Byzantines take very seriously. He marches his army through Anatolia, smashing a Seljuk army that dares to block his path. The German juggernaut seems unstoppable. It feels like Saladin's doom is marching inexorably towards him. And then, a moment of bizarre, anticlimactic tragedy. While crossing a small river in southern Anatolia, the old emperor, perhaps eager to cool off from the heat, dismounts his horse to bathe. He is seized by a heart attack in the cold water and drowns. Just like that, the great Frederick Barbarossa is gone. The psychological shock shatters his army. Leaderless and demoralized, the mighty German force disintegrates. Most of the soldiers simply turn around and go home. Only a small, broken remnant will ever reach the Holy Land. The second king is Philip II of France, known as Philip Augustus. He is not a charismatic warrior king in the traditional mold. He is a cunning, patient, and deeply political monarch. You see him as a strategist, a chess player whose real passion is not for glory on a foreign battlefield, but for the slow, methodical work of consolidating his own kingdom back home. His greatest enemy is not Saladin, it is the man he is now forced to call his ally, the King of England. He has taken the cross, but you can sense his heart is not in it. For him, the crusade is a political necessity, a troublesome distraction from his true life's work of building the French state. Historians still debate his true level of commitment, but his actions suggest he saw the crusade primarily through the lens of his rivalry with the English crown. And then, there is the third king. He is the man whose name would become so intertwined with this crusade that it is often simply called his story. Richard I of England, better known as Richard the Lionheart. He is the opposite of Philip in every way. He is a tall, handsome, and immensely charismatic warrior, perhaps the most brilliant military commander of his generation. He is also arrogant, hot-tempered, and has very little interest in the tedious business of actually governing England. His entire being is geared towards the pursuit of glory on the battlefield. For Richard, the crusade is not a distraction. It is the entire point of being a king. He liquidates vast portions of his kingdom's assets, selling off titles, lands, and offices to the highest bidder to fund what will be the most expensive and well-equipped expedition imaginable. You watch as these two great rivals, Philip and Richard, their armies traveling by sea to avoid the disasters of the land route, finally set sail for the Holy Land. One king who wants to be anywhere else, and one king who was born for this moment. The stage is set for a legendary clash of titans, the first and only major objective upon which the two kings, Richard and Philip, can agree is the city of Acre. This vital port city has been under siege by the remnants of the Crusader army for nearly 2 years. It has become a brutal, grinding war of attrition, a bloody stalemate with the Christian army besieging the Muslim garrison of the city, while Saladin's main army camps nearby, effectively besieging the besiegers. It is a miserable, disease-ridden meat grinder, and it is here that the armies of the Third Crusade make their stand. The arrival of Philip and Richard, with their fresh troops and, crucially, their massive and sophisticated siege engines, finally tips the balance. The bombardment of Acre's walls becomes relentless. You can hear the constant thunder of the great trebuchets, given names like Bad Neighbor and God's Own Catapult. The competition between the French and English forces is intense, each trying to outdo the other in their efforts to breach the walls. Richard, despite being laid low by a severe fever, has himself carried out on a stretcher to direct the fire of his crossbowmen. His presence is electric. He is a warrior king in his element, and his men adore him for it. Finally, after a brutal and prolonged defense, the starved and exhausted garrison of Acre surrenders. It is a massive victory, the first major success of the crusade, but it is a victory that is almost immediately soured by the simmering animosity between the two kings. They argue over everything. They argue over the spoils of the city. They argue over who should be the rightful king of Jerusalem, backing different local candidates and splitting the Crusader nobility into factions. Philip of France, a man ill-suited to the heat and disease of the campaign, and deeply uncomfortable in Richard's charismatic shadow, has had enough. Citing poor health, he announces that he is returning to France. It is a shocking and, in the eyes of many, dishonorable decision. He leaves behind the bulk of his army under the command of a trusted duke, but his departure leaves Richard in sole command of the crusade. Historians still debate Philip's motives. Was he genuinely ill, or was this a calculated political move to get back to France and start preying on Richard's undefended lands? Whatever the reason, the Crusade of the Three Kings is now the Crusade of One. Richard, now in his element, decides to march the army south along the coast towards the port of Jaffa, the next logical step on the road to Jerusalem. This is where you witness his military genius firsthand. The march is a masterpiece of discipline and tactical control. He knows Saladin's army will shadow him, harassing him with horse archers. He